Hi, everyone. I'm Mel Robertson, and I'd like to welcome you to Happiness is Your Own Damn Fault. What we're going to be talking about is how to drop the baggage, increase your frequency, and live a bliss-filled life. I decided to put this summit together because I want you to know that happiness is equally available to every single one of you, no matter the circumstances you've endured, no matter what you've been through, you can choose happiness now. So I wanted to interview people who are truly happy and get them to share with you their secrets on how they let go of the past, stopped worrying about the future, and started living their bliss. And today I invited my friend Krystalya Marie because she has had her share of baggage to drop, and I think she's done a phenomenal job of doing that by healing herself and finding her bliss. Now, Krystalya Marie is an international speaker, trainer, self-love enthusiast, and self-empowerment guide. Through the healing power of love and sacred power symbols, Krystalya empowers you to discover your own innate abilities for healing your body, mind, and spirit. Krystalya began her self-healing journey in her mid-20s, yet her real healing began in 2000 when, after years of self-love work, she discovered an underlying belief that had kept her from loving herself fully. In 2001, her faith and self-love were tested when she discovered a golf ball-sized lump in her breast and was guided to create healing symbols to remove the lump. Subsequently, she had various ailments, such as bladder infection, yeast infection, hyperthyroidism, deep vein thrombosis, cancer, and more. In each case, she immediately received symbols to heal the ailment. She now shares these sacred power symbols with thousands of people worldwide. Krystalya is a best-selling co-author with Wayne Dyer, Mark Victor Hansen, and Deepak Chopra in the Wake Up Live with the Live Life You Love book series, and author of the 1-Minute Energy Tune-Up Power Symbols series of books and products for healing the body, mind, and spirit. She is also the director of Inner Peace for 10 Million Clicks for Peace and host of the popular radio show Energy Healing for Body, Mind, and Spirit. Welcome, Krystalya.
Thank you, Mel. Who's that you introduced just now?
That would be you, my dear.
I don't think I could have done all that in this lifetime. Could I be that old?
That young.
There you go. Thank you.
So, Krystalya, before we jump in, you want to take a minute to just share Spirit's interesting way of leading you on your path of discovering the sacred power symbols that you work with?
Sure. A little bit about the whole path. So, as you mentioned, I started a lot of my self-healing in my 20s, but when I met a teacher in 2000, I, as you mentioned, found an underlying belief that was really keeping me from self-love, and that underlying belief was that God was going to punish me if I love myself. So you can imagine all the years of doing self-love affirmations and not getting much results. Yes, things did improve, but if you've got that underlying belief that God's going to punish you, imagine saying, I love myself, and then that little mind chatter saying, yeah, but God's going to punish you if you do that.
It cancels each other out.
They absolutely cancel each other out. And so in 2000, when I met this teacher, I actually volunteered to have her muscle check, which basically, for those that don't understand, muscle checking is testing the strength of a muscle with a yes-no question. If it's strong, it's yes. If it's weak, it's no. And so I said I had healed my self-love issues, and I stood up there and said, I love myself, and she pushed down on my arm, and my arm went weak. So we then did some further checking and found that belief that I mentioned a moment ago about God punishing me. Well, I was a computer geek, okay? So I really wasn't into the muscle checking and stuff, but I was starting to get a little more interested in these things. And I had also been attuned to Reiki, and when they shared with me that they had symbols in Reiki, I dismissed Reiki totally. Now, this particular teacher I was working with in 2000 drew symbols for soul retrieval. So here I am now twice, and this time I'm actually taking the symbols seriously as I start studying with her. So I thought that was the perfect answer. I became one of her licensed practitioners. And as you mentioned, in 2001, I've got this lump in my breast. I did everything she taught me. I then started going to all these healers, and one day a medical intuitive said to me, "You need to draw those symbols floating in your aura." And I clearly remember rolling my eyes and saying, "Yeah, right, whatever." So Spirit has an interesting way of getting us to our gifts and how easily we can deny them. And as you said, I ended up getting an image and removing the lump from my breast basically in a 20-minute process, which was what really got my attention.
Yeah, 20 minutes. That's amazing.
Yes, yes. And as you mentioned, some of the other things that I had happen after that, all of those processes were 15 to 20 minutes after I got the symbol. So once I'd ask for what the image was and draw it, I'd go through what's the emotional piece, do I need to release, and all of that. And typically a process took me 20 minutes to do.
So how long were those images floating in your aura and you seeing them, dismissing them in your own field before the medical intuitive even brought them to your attention?
I have no idea because, of course, I had no idea they were happening. But here's the interesting part as you ask that question. When I go back, a couple years into this drawing, I go back and I start looking at places that I had journaled and even just notes from meetings. And I discovered that I had been making these little doodles that are a lot of the symbols. So I'm guessing that many of the doodles I did even when I was just a kid probably were trying to get these symbols to come through me all those years.
Well, what's amazing to note, there's something I want to point out about that too, just for our audience, is that even if we don't necessarily or haven't been paying attention to our gifts or we don't get them, Spirit is going to make sure we find out. We're not going to be misled on this path. We all have a journey and a purpose, and we're all going to make it there. Even though you were not even aware of it or fighting it, you were still led to it in a way that worked for you. And I think that's absolutely beautiful, and that's how Spirit works with each one of us.
Well, I think that's a really good point, Mel, and I think one of the big keys is to not try so hard to determine what it is, but take each step every day and just be in faith and know that your gift is there. And I think that's one of the really big keys to the whole thing. It's not so much as trying to find it all the time, because then you're trying too hard to create something. And Spirit knows Spirit kind of knows when's the best timing and what you need to go through to really receive.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I want to ask you, what was it like for you to move from that place of fear and moving into a place of trusting the inner guidance that you were getting, that you needed to do these symbols, you needed to use this, going from that fear and resistance to that journey into acceptance and being open and trusting?
Well, I think it was a much longer journey than I probably remember, because so many things in all of our lives, including my own, are very fear-based, all the way from if we have anger, we have frustration, we have greed, whatever, all of those things, if you really look seriously, are all fear-based. So looking at the whole thing from the receiving the symbols, I have to say, if you consider the fact that I dismissed Reiki because of symbols, there had to be some real fears there about the idea of even sharing things like that. Because imagine, I'm a computer geek. I'm very oriented to these facts and numbers, and everything just works, right? And you create everything.
Yeah.
And suddenly I am being introduced to symbols. Well, what do they got to do with anything? Art is beautiful, but at the time I didn't understand that it could affect my energy. And, so then there's the whole piece of what are other people going to think? So even after I drew the first symbol and got this lump to come out of my breast, there were a lot of people I didn't want to share that with because I would be laughed at. My family, they're not into it. So, yeah, it was an interesting journey to move past that. And now I'm such an open book that I probably shock people. But I think it's, being in faith and just gradually realizing that people aren't as bad as you might even envision. That was a huge awakening for me. I remember one of the times being very fearful about sharing any metaphysical stuff I'd learned or read because I had an ex-husband that on our first date he was all, oh yeah, I like Edgar Cayce and I do this and that. And then as soon as I started to discuss any metaphysical stuff, he poo-pooed it all, and I ended up becoming what I later termed a closet metaphysician because I needed to fit in, right?
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and one day after I left him, I had an interesting experience. I was at a party with 15 people at a table, and they had all been people I had worked with previously, and I suddenly started opening my mouth and talking about all this metaphysical stuff, and here was the fascinating part. We have, in our mind, we have all these ideas that everybody's going to diss us and, all of that. One person left the table. The other 14 people, or 13 people, because there was 15 counting me, stayed at the table, and each and every one of them had something metaphysical to share. And at that point, that's when I said, we're all just a bunch of closet metaphysicians that don't want to share what we've heard because we're all afraid someone's going to judge us. And don't we all go through life concerned about what other people think? And that was probably the biggest breaking point for me when I realized how I had suppressed so much of that knowledge and not shared it with very many people because I was afraid, and then here I am. My mouth's going a mile a minute, and everybody's not only accepting, but they all also have a story to share.
Yeah, and I love how it happened suddenly. You just found yourself standing in front of them spouting metaphysical stuff off. It wasn't something that you planned or even thought that you would even do. It just, you were moved by spirit because you were open to it.
Absolutely. Open to it is a good way to put it. And yes, spirit really guided me there. If you had asked me that night how that party was going to go, I would have never. Never in my wildest dream would I have been talking about those subjects.
Oh, awesome. Oh, I love that. It's such an amazing process, moving from fear and trusting the inner guidance. If you could, I know that there's plenty of people that are listening to this that are really, crippled and paralyzed by fear and not really sure how to move forward and start trusting that inner guidance. Do you have any words of wisdom or a piece of advice that you could give to them to help them take that leap and be open to, what spirit has in store for them?
Well, the first thing I want to say is, some of the things I've shared have been dramatic, but I've had one really dramatic experience of listening to spirit. And I'm going to give a really quick abbreviated version of it. But I lost all my money, and I quickly knew the best thing to do was sell my house. I started out listing it, like $15,000 higher than the real estate agents thought I should start at, and ended up with multiple guidance and continually raising the price. I ended up selling the house for cash for $257,000. $57,000 more than the original realtors wanted to list the house. And that was 100% because of spiritual guidance. Who raises the price of their house when you're trying to sell and you're in panic because you don't have money?
So you raised it more than once, right? Like in your guidance, you were guided to raise it more than one time, right? I remember.
Yes, I believe it was 4 total times that I raised it through that year. And there was lots of other cool things that happened that brought money in to keep me sustained throughout that whole thing. But I had a loan of over $150,000 on the house, and I had another $120,000 in credit card debt. And my balance in my bank account was zero. I had my utilities even shut off one time through the process. But my point being is Spirit knows a lot more things than anything we can control. And if we can get to that point of listening to the inner guidance, our life can go way easier. And so one of the tools I like to share with people, because, we question, well, how do I know if it's inner guidance versus my ego? So I like to keep it really simple because I don't want to interpret the answers.
Right.
Okay, don't give me signs because then I have to figure out what the sign means, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just speak to me plainly.
Yes. So my thing is I give Spirit the signs, and I say, if this happens, then this means this, and if this happens, it means this.
Okay, I like that.
But here's the really big key. There's two keys to doing it that way. One, you have no control over the yes or no. In other words, you don't know. You can't control that outcome of the yes or no. You have to know for sure. Like you say, so-and-so is going to call me, and you have not placed a call to them. You haven't left a message in months, whatever. They're not likely to call, and that might be your yes, and the other is the no. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, and this is really important, you follow that guidance. You don't question it. You do it even if it seems like the most insane thing you could possibly come up with. And miracles will happen every single time if you're willing to do that. But that's the really big key. When you get that
awesome.
guidance, follow it without question.
Yes, follow. And then, look at also what happened for you. You said that there was even a moment where, like, your utility bills got shut off, your bank account was zeroed. It doesn't always look like it's going to come to fruition, but you have to stay in faith in the decisions that you made, even when it doesn't look like it's going to happen, even when the bank account is zero and the lights are turned off or it's not working out the way you wanted it to. You stayed in faith and still took the guidance and made the leap and followed through, and then look what happened. But it just doesn't always look like it's going to happen. So I wanted to put that out because that's really important. We think like, oh, we want this thing to happen, and then, oh, we don't get enough money, or the bills don't get paid 1 month or something, that it's not necessarily the right direction. We didn't make the right step, but it just doesn't always look like that. So I wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I appreciate you pointing that out because that is one of the challenges at times. We're like, oh, but now I took this guidance and the utility bills got behind, and now the electric's off, and what do? You could say, you could swear at Spirit and all of that stuff, and I probably did a few times. But, in the long run, what I've discovered through this process is I am never let down in the long run. Will it seem like I'm let down in the short run? Yeah, because there's something new I have to learn. This is the other really big piece of it, is whenever something happens, positive or negative, but especially negative because that's what we tend to focus more attention on, is look for the good. Look for what is the good in that piece. Because I promise you, you will find something good in everything that happens.
Absolutely. I love that you said that because it's like, we came to Earth to grow, learn, expand, and love, and the only way that you can do that is through these learning experiences and having, the stuff that doesn't work out and the things that do work out, and staying in faith through all of it. So yeah, absolutely.
Right. It can be tough at times. I mean, I won't say it's easy, but I can say it is rewarding in the long run.
It is, and if you can just look at everything that happens in life as it's designed for your growth and for your expansion, and that it's not just happening to you to harm you or whatever. Like really, there's an ultimate divine energy that's guiding your life and has you in the palm of its hand. That and you can trust that you'll get through it. And see everything as a learning experience, molding you and creating you into the person you're supposed to become. But you can't grow and change without any challenges. If everything was hunky-dory, you wouldn't grow at all.
Right. Well, and if you really consider, if everything went perfectly, just imagine that for a moment. All the listeners, there would be nothing to experience.
Yeah.
If we had no negative things happen in our life, there would be no such thing as experience whatsoever.
Right, because if there was no negative, there couldn't be any positive, so life couldn't exist.
Exactly. So people say to me, well, how can you, and I didn't talk about this earlier, but I was beat up and stabbed by a fellow years ago I was dating, and I can sit in meditation and visualize him and send him love, and people are like, how can you do that? I'm like, how can I not do that? He lowered his vibration for me to learn how to love myself more. And he gave me a gift because I can help pick other people that are going through abusive situations that I couldn't have helped because I wouldn't have understood if I hadn't gone through it myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I was able to do the same. I had a brother who, had harmed me when I was younger, and now people, were like, how can you forgive him and love him and send him love and understanding? And it's just, he lowered his vibration to teach me something. He came into this world to teach me, and when I look at how that event changed my life, I wouldn't take it back for the world because it made me who I am today without that happening. And I totally am grateful and thankful for what happened. I have an appreciation and a gratitude for it today rather than I can't believe that happened to me and I'm going to lug around this anger and this resentment and this hatred towards someone and not forgive them when it was really for my own good.
Right. And you said lug around. I love that because it leads me into that whole thought of, you're right. Every time you hang on to all that negativity and all the blame and all the reasons that you should still be angry because that person wasn't justified in doing that, you know who you're hurting? One person, and that's yourself. You are not doing any harm to that person whatsoever, and you're not doing anything other than lowering your own vibration, lowering your energy, and letting that become the anchor, or as you said, the thing you're lugging around, that anchor that you're dragging with you. Do you really want to drag this stuff with you, or do you want to have a lighter load and be happier?
Yeah, exactly. When you drop the baggage, your frequency increases, and then you can live your bliss. Absolutely. So speaking of living a bliss-filled life, what does living your bliss look like for you? What does it mean to you to live a bliss-filled life?
For me, it really means not dragging around a lot of baggage. I really find that when I'm in my blissful state, which is most all the time, it's rare that anybody can even ruffle my feathers anymore, but it took a long time to get here.
Yeah. I love that.
But, I just look at things and I can be just so amazed at how beautiful things are, the simplest little thing. And yet I don't have a luxurious life. I don't have all the things. This is one of the things. A lot of people think, oh, you've got to have all these things. No, I've actually shed most of them totally, and I actually professionally house sit. I move from house sit to house sit. Everything that I own has to fit in my car. And that is blissful in itself. Everything's so light. I don't have a bunch of stuff to think about or be concerned about. Yeah. And being in that flow of just allowing Spirit to guide me to the next place and being okay with wherever that is a blissful state for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that you do that. I forgot that you did that. I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. You do get to do that. That is so freeing to be able to just go from house to house and live like that. I love that. If I wasn't married, I would do that.
And certainly it has its challenges, but again, when you look at the whole thing in perspective, it's wonderful. And it's really about looking for what it is you're grateful for every moment, not just one time a day to write down 5, but to really embrace anything that's coming through into your life and be grateful for it.
Yeah, and be open and watch for it, because I know for me, Spirit's always talking to me and showing me signs and, always just saying hi and showing that I'm on the right direction. Or even if I'm like thinking a thought or wondering something, like, you know, Spirit will send a bird flying by that I love to just acknowledge me, or send a dragonfly or something. You know, I always get signs with animals and stuff like that. So I love how when you're open to it, Spirit will talk to you when you ask,
Right.
you know,
Yes.
and be open. I love it.
And actually, you know, my little example earlier, the phone call, I use nature to give me signs as well. Like when I lived in Sedona for a while, there was a red dragonfly. Now, I had never seen red dragonflies.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would always say, okay, if a red dragonfly flies by my face today, here's the answer.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. I mean, I had one. It literally came down, it came up almost to my nose and looked me right in the face like, I dare you to not believe that I heard your plea, right?
I love that. I love that. I remember my grandfather comes to visit me as a dragonfly, and I remember, you know, I was sitting outside, you know, missing him one day and just thinking about him and just, you know, feeling kind of far away from him and just missing him. And then a dragonfly flew in front of me and flew around, and then a few seconds later, a young baby dragonfly came up on its tail and was flying with it. You know, it was just like, you're with me, I'm with you. I was like, oh my goodness, how beautiful is that? And of course, I just broke out into tears, you know. But I was like, I get those signs, you know, when I ask or when I put something out to the universe, I'm always answered.
Right, right. Well, one of the things I do when I'm putting things out to the universe is be careful that you're watching for the sign, too. So one day I said I hadn't seen butterflies for a while, and I put out a sign to see a butterfly. So I go for my morning walk, and I'm looking for butterflies. And I keep seeing the white butterflies everywhere. So I went into meditation. I said, okay, I know you're trying to give me the sign, but I know I'm really kind of swaying it because I'm looking. So if it really is yes, show me a beautiful colored butterfly. So I'm sitting in meditation by the water, and I'm quiet as can be, and suddenly I hear, open your eyes, and like 10 feet away from me is a beautiful monarch butterfly.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, how can you deny that as an answer at that point?
Yeah,
You know?
seriously, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I love it.
you know, we have to be careful if we try to manipulate these signs, but trusting them though is important.
Yeah, absolutely. So something I wanted to ask you too is, you know, you really struggled with self-love and self-worth and you know, found these symbols. How do you feel that the work that you've done on yourself has really contributed to you being able to live a bliss-filled life?
Well, I think self-love is the key, okay? What I mean by that is if you are always finding yourself questioning yourself, if you're finding yourself thinking you're not good enough, you're not worthy, you can't support yourself, you're not supported by others, if you feel like everybody else is judging you, you're probably finding yourself judging yourself. And so to me, self-love, when you can get to the point of stop judging yourself, stop worrying what other people think, and just be authentically yourself, that is when you can really find your bliss, find happiness, overcome your fears, and be who you came here to be on the planet. Now, as I said, it's still a journey getting there, but if you can start to do little things to honor yourself and notice when you're judging yourself, because we all do it.
Yeah.
You know, when you catch yourself and correct, you'll find your life just becomes way better, way smoother. And to me, self-love is the key for healing, happiness, blissfulness, the whole 9 yards, as they say.
It is. I think it's the core of it all. When you start loving yourself, everything else falls into place.
Right.
The extra pounds you wanted to lose, the regular taking care of yourself at the gym or the routine you want to do, all of that becomes effortless once you start loving yourself first. When you try to do it backwards, it doesn't work.
Yes, in fact, one of my students in my first Art of Healing course years ago, we never talked about her having a weight issue. She joined the class, and we got into the self-love stuff, and at the end of the 6th week of the class, she said to me, I've really been loving myself more, and you know what I noticed is I dropped, I believe it was 5 pant sizes in the past 6 weeks, but I haven't lost a pound. And so we started looking at it, and then she actually took my weight class afterwards and lost some pounds as well. But she realized that all the areas that are specifically related to self-love was where the weight had shifted off of her. So she didn't feel nourished. So that's why she was losing the weight in the waist area.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. She didn't feel like she was getting the nourishment she needed, not for herself or from others either. And she shifted that. She started to love herself more, and that made all the difference.
Oh, that's wonderful. I know self-love is so powerful. I mean, just by making the choice to just set, I mean, I lost like 48 pounds just by loving myself, just for showing up for myself every day and just like doing some gentle stretching, you know, and just because I started loving myself more and making time for myself every day, within like 4 months I lost 40 pounds. And I'm like, how did that happen? It was not even intentional, you know?
Right. And I think that's another key is just being open to whatever comes and happens to you. I actually interviewed a fella on my radio show not long ago that he basically had been through every diet. By the time he was 18, his parents submitted him to trial diet programs and research because he had so much weight. He'd been obese from the time he was a little kid. And it wasn't until he discovered his beliefs around himself and the issues of self-love that he actually lost weight and lost it permanently. You know, and he'd been on, he started listing the diet programs, and I was like, I didn't even know there were that many.
Right.
Like, that's the tip of the iceberg. I was on a lot more than the popular ones I just named. I'm like, oh, my.
Wow.
And self-love was the key for him, and I think it is the key for all of us when we really get into really wanting to heal any part of our life, whether it's financial, whether it's our relationships with others. If we start to love ourselves more, we reflect that out. The people that we attract and the people in our lives treat us differently.
Absolutely. What are some of the ways that you love yourself and show yourself self-love? So our audience, if they don't practice, I know like a lot of our audience probably doesn't even take 5 or 10 minutes for themselves every day. So what are some good things that they can do to start loving themselves?
Well, I think, you know, we have such a busy life that, you know, everybody's like, well, I don't have time for one more thing. So especially for the moms. And so I know we've got other listeners, but I think moms are some of the worst when it comes to self-love. That we all want to, like, be martyrs and self-sacrifice all the time. And what I'm going to suggest is that you take 5 to 10 minutes a day and do something good for yourself. So you're going to say, well, I don't have 5 or 10 minutes. And I'm going to tell you, you have to find 5 or 10 minutes because it is so important that instead of ending up in the hospital or something else, how about if you took those 5 or 10 minutes each day instead of waiting until you're so sick you end up in the hospital, which is what my mother used to do. She would say, oh, I have to get sick and go to the hospital to get a break. Well, that's kind of sad.
Right?
Yeah, it's like, okay, so now you're gone for 2 weeks. Do you think that 5 minutes a day mattered? Yeah, it could have made a huge difference. So if that means hanging a sign on the doorknob outside the bathroom and you want to take a nice hot bubble bath, then do that. But also ask for help. So when you let other people in your household help, they actually don't mind. You discover that they actually appreciate being invited in to help. But here's one of the keys. You got to accept them for the way they do the job.
Yep. That acceptance thing again.
Yes, because, yes, they might not dry the dishes the way you would, or they might not put them away in the right place, but they're doing part of the job. And if you just accept that they put the dishes somewhere else, okay, the dishes are rearranged a little bit. Who cares?
Right? Seriously.
Yeah, yeah. So those are just a couple of the things. If you can, make time to get a massage every once in a while. And this is for both men and women. I can tell you, just having somebody give you a full body massage once in a while is really, really wonderful. It's good for the soul as well as for the body.
Yeah,
so
I second
treat
that.
yourself those ways instead of eating chocolate and all of those kinds of things that aren't all that healthy. Or if you're going to eat chocolate, make yourself some organic chocolate that has no sugar in it. That's what I do if I want chocolate. I make my own homemade chocolate.
Smart.
All healthy and all organic and no sugar added except a tiny little bit of honey.
Email me that recipe. Email me that recipe.
Okay. And, so find little things like that. Don't make this so arduous that you end up not doing it, in other words. Make it little tiny incremental steps. If all it is having the kids set the table instead of you, and make it a game, make it fun. That's another thing. If you can make some of those things fun, then it becomes easier for you to ask them to help, and they enjoy it more.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that.
And then I think one other thing is to learn to laugh at things. It's really, really key. And I call it the laughing at the experience of life in general. Because if you don't, you take everything too seriously, all you do is put a bunch of stress into your body. And the truth of the matter is, from what I have found, is there is no right or wrong. There is just different people's perspective on what they should or shouldn't do.
Exactly.
And if you can kind of laugh at, when you get upset, like I'll use an example. The person I last dated that we lived together for a while would dry all the dishes, but he never put them away. Well, at first it bugged me. It's like, hello, there's a cupboard there, put them away. But I started to laugh at, okay, this is his pattern. This is something he does. So I started to just laugh at it when I'd see him do it. I'd be like, yeah, they'll get put away some point, no big deal. And I would actually laugh at it, and it became kind of funny then, and it was like no big deal.
I like that, laugh at it, yeah. It does make it no big deal.
Yeah. I mean, we take things way too seriously, and I think our country in particular, we take things far more seriously than a lot of other countries, and I think it's detrimental to our health to not learn to laugh at things more.
Yeah, I mean, life just is. Like, stuff is going to happen. Like, you just laugh about it and accept it and move on and don't get stuck in it. Don't hang on to it.
Let's use another example. You're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off. Now, you can get really mad and you can give them the finger, yell, scream, get angry. Or you can just laugh at it and say, oh, they must be having one of those days where they weren't paying attention. I bet you've done that a few times.
Yeah. Yep. I usually wind up laughing at myself because I'm like, oh, I'm laughing because, I've done that. Oh, I cut someone off like that before. Oh, boy. Yep.
Yep. Or I will actually laugh at how I used to act because I used to have a convertible and I lived in Detroit. And I would literally have the top down and put my hand out the window or the top of the car and give them the finger, right?
Yeah.
How grown up is that? So now I laugh at it like, you know what you would do before? This is so funny.
Right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're just about out of time. So before we go, I understand that you are going to be offering everybody a free gift on peak performance energy. What's that about?
Well, it's an audio program along with a few of my symbols that teach you how to really look at what is blocking your energy, how to release that and open it so it starts to flow, because when the energy is flowing in our body, we have more energy because it's not having to work around these blocks and these negative things that we've got going on in our lives. So the program is little pieces of audio, so you don't have to listen to a big long thing. You listen to whatever pieces you want to, or you can listen in order first and then listen to what pieces you like later. And it includes the symbols So you can actually get a tune-up in, are you ready for this, 20 seconds. So literally there's a chakra symbol in there that in 20 seconds, if you just put it against the skin of your non-dominant hand and let your body just take it in, taking just a moment, 20 seconds, okay, it will literally open the body's energy system and get the energy flowing. So that's included. There's a couple other symbols and some processes included in that gift. And, so many of us have so much depleted energy. I thought that was a great gift to help people have more energy.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's perfect. So before we close, do you have any last words you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I think we've covered a lot of what I'm going to share, but I want to just kind of go back for a moment and say the two biggest keys, or let's say three biggest keys, are trusting the guidance you get and not questioning it. It can make a huge difference in your life. Take a moment every day, even if it's just 5 minutes, to do something good for yourself. And finally, find some way to laugh at some of the things you've taken too seriously before. And just by doing those three things, and I'm not talking about taking a lot of time to do it, but just by doing those three things, I believe you're going to find more bliss, more joy, and more happiness in your life.
I love those three steps. Excellent. Thanks so much. It's been such a pleasure having you here. So I want to take a moment just before we close to just remind everyone that happiness is an inside job, and it's available to every single one of you. We're living in a time now where we can choose to drop whatever baggage we've been carrying around. We can drop the old stories. It just starts with a choice. You are powerful beyond measure, and all you need to do is tap into that divine power that created you and follow the guidance you were given. You were born to be happy, experience joy, and live a wide open, spacious life. Krystalya, it's been such a pleasure to have you here again with me. Thank you so much.
Mel, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to share with you and your listeners. Thank you.
Thank you so much.